Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. The mission of the St. Louis nonprofit organization Crime Victim Center is right there in its name. It helps victims of crime with counseling and legal service. It's been doing that work for 48 years. The vast majority of the people it helps are victims of domestic violence. 90% of them are women, and these are women like Alexis. She didn't want us to use her last name for reasons of safety, but she agreed to share her story with us today. So, Alexis, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much.
So you were 25 when you had your son. When did your relationship with the boy's father first turn violent?
It started before I actually even got pregnant, actually. And so, about a year and a half before we had him.
Okay, and how bad did things get?
He had physically injured me numerous times, broken into windows. He had forced me to stay in houses. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, that sounds terrible, and I'm sorry that you dealt with that.
I actually had the courage to finally leave him, and then 3 days later I found out we were pregnant. So
that's some tough timing there.
Then the roller coaster started all over again.
So you found out you were pregnant. You ended up having your son. When did you get to a point where you decided, hey, I can't deal with this. I'm getting out of here?
When he he tried to yank my son from my arms. He withheld the car seat when I felt that my son was in danger. Mm-hmm. I instantly was done. The first time I felt my son's life would be affected negatively and that something could happen, I couldn't live with myself if something happened to my kid.
And this was someone...
He's my world.
How old is your son today?
He'll be 5 August 1st.
Okay. So this was really a catalyst for you getting out of this situation. How were you able to get out?
My son's dad decided to try to force me to stay in the house for this last time while he was yanking on my child. And he had the car seat and locked the doors so I couldn't get out. I finally was able... I dropped the car seat, I grabbed my son, and we ran out the door. I put him on the floorboard of my car because I literally... I didn't know what else to do, but I knew that he was going to try to stop me. Mm-hmm. And while I put him in the floor and as I was trying to get into my car seat, he punched me in my face.
Oh my goodness.
And so I called the police. Couldn't even get my door shut all the way, and I drove off. The door was shut where my son was, on the right-hand side of the car. But where I was at, my driver's door wasn't even completely shut. But I drove off, and I had called the police. And thankfully, it was on camera because he did go directly to the courthouse to file a restraining order against me, with accusations and lies, of course. When I arrived, he was there. And he goes, that's who I want an order of protection against.
You must have just been freaking out.
I was sick. I mean, I was a new mom. My child was, 8 pounds. I mean, it was absolutely terrifying. It was absolutely sickening. I was an emotional wreck. I mean, no one ever wants this to happen, and I finally had got that courage to leave him. And then, we got pregnant. So one of the ladies that was working there came out to me and she was like, let me take you into this room. And I'm like sobbing in tears. It was just so scary. And the fact that I'm in a room with him when we walked in was petrifying. So she brought me into a room and she was like, you hold him, you tell me what you want to write down and we will, get your order of protection working. They had him stay there. He was under the impression that he was in the right, of course, that he was going to get the order of protection. And they waited until I filled out my paperwork and served him right then and there.
That must have just felt like the best moment to realize that they believed you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you would have seen my face, you would have, there would have been no way not to. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was a very, very good manipulator. He still currently is a very good manipulator and a really good liar. So, he did try to deframe my character and me as a mom. So that was really hard to go through that part of it too. But they then gave me, my attorney now, Katie Wessling, they gave me her information, who works with them. And she, has just done everything. And I feel like I'm paying her $1 million for the work that she does and what their company does or what their business does.
And so you got in touch, or you got this lawyer through the Crime Victim Center. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. They actually contacted her for me. I guess they worked together. They contacted her for me, kind of explained my story and everything that was going on. And then she contacted me, we met, and it went all uphill from there. When everything happened, my son's dad took the food out of the fridge, everything. And I didn't work during my pregnancy.
So you were kind of at his mercy there.
Oh, 1,000%. I had nothing. He convinced me to stop working while I left when I was about 2 months pregnant. So I had no income. He paid the bills. We lived together. But he also made all of the rules. And controlled absolutely every aspect of my life.
It's such a terrifying situation. And yet there you are, that day you had finally managed to flee. You had your son on the floorboard of the car. You get away. And then the people that are there, they help you. They understand your side of things. They don't just trust what he's saying. Was this a real breakthrough that somebody actually believed?
It was incredible. When I think about it, it's so emotional, because what I went through was hell, needless to say, and I didn't know what, we had ahead of us for my son and I. And the crime victim people there were just amazing. They did everything they could to help me. And, now 5 years later, I own a business and I own my house and I own my car. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them at all. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, that is amazing.
Because my son's dad tried to get full custody of my son.
So he fought you every step of the way, including in the court system when he couldn't fight you at home.
Definitely. And his sob story in front of a judge, if you didn't know him and you didn't know me and we didn't have the police reports and the video of him punching me and all the evidence of things that he had done to me, I would have believed him. He's a very, very manipulative individual.
Well, it's such a terrifying situation, but it is such a testimonial for the Crime Victim Center. And our other guest here today is Marti Kelly, the executive director of the Crime Victim Center. And Marti, hearing Alexis say that about your organization, what's going through your mind as you heard her just say that how invaluable this work was?
Alexis is very sweet, and we appreciate what she says. We help more than 5,000 people every year with similar situations.
We often think of people fleeing these situations as needing support with food or needing support with money. We don't always think about the legal side of things. How big is that in terms of what your organization works on?
It's huge. We have advocates that also work at the courthouses and at the police stations that help domestic violence clients when they call we call them. After a weekend, if we hear that there's a disturbance somewhere, we contact them. So it's very important. The legal side is very important. It helps them get the help that they need so that they can get in a safe place.
Now, the way Alexis told that story, it almost seemed as if you just sort of magically materialized. Alexis, was that what it felt like to you, that the Crime Victim Center was suddenly in your life?
Yes, it was 1,000%. And I would say, finding food and all those other resources, it's harder out there, but the legal side is what we needed. And if I could ask for help with anything, looking back of what I dealt with, the legal side is 1,000% the most needed. You can go to a food shelter and get food. You can go and try, go to a women's shelter. Those are options that are out there for everybody. But the legal help, it's unspeakable. my son's dad, like I said, he took me to court for full custody without the organization. I mean, I know I'm a good person, and I love my son more than anything on earth. But when you have somebody who has a job, who has a house, and then you have myself, referring to my son's father, then you have myself who didn't work for 10 months. I have no income. I can't even support myself, without the organization. There's who knows what would have happened.
Now, Marti, the one thing we all know about lawyers is that they don't tend to be cheap. How are you able to provide these lawyers to help women in these cases where they just can't pay for it themselves?
All of our services are free, and we are able to offer those due to the government funding that we receive, also private funding from corporations and individual donations.
And so are the lawyers on staff, or are they also doing this in addition to other work?
So we have one full-time attorney that works for us, and then she has a battery of volunteer attorneys that she can call into a case depending if it's in Jefferson County, Franklin County, St. Louis City. She can call them and say, hey, I got a case for you. And she has spent 20 hours at least training these volunteer lawyers before she hands a case over to them.
So they're specially trained in issues involving domestic violence.
Yes.
So I have to ask you about one thing. I mean, it's just great to hear how well Alexis is doing today. But we were just talking to Public Safety Director Jimmy Edwards, and he was talking about during this pandemic, as people have been stuck at home, that there have been an increase in domestic violence to the point that he referred to a case where somebody had been murdered in a domestic situation.
Yes.
How have you seen the lockdown and the sheltering at home play out in terms of the people you serve?
We've seen an escalation in domestic violence. Some agencies won't tell you that they did, but we are at the police station and we get copies of the police report. And we can tell you that in April, there was a 225% increase in the county and a 25% increase in the city. And the police officers that we spoke to and asked them why they thought that was, they believe that it's because the people in the county aren't essential workers as often, and they're staying home and working with their spouse in a home instead of going out and still leaving every day for work.
So they don't even have a chance to get out and call for help?
Yeah.
Alexis, thinking about these people being stuck at home with their abusers, does that put you back into the situation you were in?
Definitely. I mean, like I said, I didn't work, so I spent every day with my son's father when he wasn't at work. I wasn't supposed to leave the house. I couldn't imagine. I think about that and I pray for those people all the time just because I went through that for so long.
Marti, now that things are opening up, is the situation changing?
It really hasn't yet. We believe that it will very soon, but it's still the same. Our advocates that work in the county are receiving many more calls than they normally do. And the thing about the calls is they're usually worse than they were before because of the escalation, because they're living together longer and everything. So it's a real challenge.
How do you get the sense that local law enforcement is prepared to deal with all this? I mean, these are such tough issues. As Alexis was explaining, her abuser tried to make himself look like the victim.
Yeah. I don't think that anyone was ready for this. I don't think any of us were ready for COVID-19. I believe that the police officers are doing the best they can, and they're forwarding the clients to us, and we're doing the best we can, and we're hopefully helping a lot of people.
And it sounds like you're just doing the Lord's work here. If people are listening to this and they feel like they want to help your organization, what can we do?
Well, we would love a donation. Our website is supportvictims.org, and there's a donate button there. We also have a trivia night coming up on August 28th, fingers crossed, at the Kirkwood Community Center, and you can also register for that on there.
We do want to say, if you or someone you know is the victim of domestic violence, you want to call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. That's 1-800-799-7233. That's, again, the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And Alexis, in just our last minute here, if somebody's listening to this and they are in one of these situations, what would you want them to know?
that they can get through it. It's hard and it's scary, but it's for the best.
And your life is proof that people can get through a moment like this, and there's a great life on the other side.
Definitely. Sorry. Yeah, definitely.
Well, Alexis, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
And Marti Kelly, Executive Director of the Crime Victim Center, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. That's 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.